And good morning on a Friday. Here we did it again, didn't we? Made it through another week together, and that's a good thing. And my goodness, what a difference a day makes. Seems like we have these things happening like this every so often where, one day into the next, it's like, whoa, what happened? If you haven't been outside yet, it is definitely fall. All right, we got that nip in the air, and it's at least around here, it's beautifully clear, and so it's a good Friday no matter what. And glad to be here with you. Hope your day is starting off well, or going well, or went well, depending on whenever you are dipping into this broadcast. But it's good to be able to hang out with you all today. We have, yes, it is fall outside, no question. So let's see, Norma Jean and Jackie and Donna and Susan, Jane, I think I got you. There might be somebody else, but I don't see the name. But thank you guys. I appreciate having you along for the journey this morning as we turn the calendar page as well, right? My goodness. Whew, man, this year just flew by, didn't it? My gosh. But that's the way it goes. We're in a season of acceleration in more ways than one, I guess. So anyway, good to be with you. We're going to continue our journey here in Luke chapter 12. And, honestly, the parables that Jesus is telling here are, I don't know, they're some of the most difficult things for people to get a hold of. It was for me. I don't, profess that, I had all this figured out. It's taken me years to really become familiar enough with the heart of the Father and the heart of Jesus as he expresses the heart of the Father to see some of these things in the correct light. And unfortunately, for many of us who have been in and around the church environment for years, or long enough time to be influenced by some of the religious kinds of mindsets and interpretations and whatnot, what we're about to read has been viewed in a very negative or very almost a scary kind of a view. So let me go ahead and yesterday we talked about how we have been resourced by the Father with just about anything you could imagine, and even beyond what we could imagine. All the needs, the resources, all the whatever it is that we need to be what he created us to be, it's already there for us, right? And so we were talking about how, the Lord wants us to fully embrace that and fully engage with our purpose, our destiny, what we were created for. And kind of that's where we left off, And today we're going to talk about really the secrets that are not really secrets, but apparently they are. They were for me until I understood properly how to read through this. Okay. But it's secrets that, if we understand it, will lead us into success in life, which is what he wants, right? Why would he want his kids to be failures? I mean, come on, right? So he's talking about being alert, being focused, on target with whatever it is that you're called to do. And he puts this in the context of a master returning at any hour, right? We know Jesus is coming back, and what I want to be in a situation where he returns and I'm just off doing my own thing. No, I don't want to do that. I mean, why would I? Why would I want to do that when he did so much for me? And again, I got to be careful here because we've got such a a tendency to get performance oriented, where it's like, well, I've got to do this in order to, prove my love to the Lord, in order to make him happy. And if I don't do this, he's not going to be happy. I'm not talking about that. I'm just simply talking out of the sheer gratitude that he's given me and given you a part to play in the grand plan, the grand scheme of his will and purposes in the universe, right? We've been brought into all of that, right? So he goes on and in this parable here, verse 38 of chapter 12, it says, whether he, the master, comes in the second watch or even in the third and finds them so, blessed are those slaves, those servants, right? So, I want to be among the blessed. I want to be among those that when he comes, I'm doing what I was created for, right? Because it's a privilege, because it's awesome. It's an amazing thing to figure that out by his grace, right? For him to show us who we are and what we're here for. I mean, that's like, oh, what? Really? I get to do that? Yes. And so, once you get that kind of clarity, wow, okay, let's get this done, right? I want to, that's all I care about now, is just being involved and engaged with the things that I was created for. And so, this is what he's talking about here. And then he uses another analogy. He says, and be sure of this, that if the head of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have allowed his house to be broken into. What is that? That's simply remaining alert, remaining on target, remaining engaged in whatever it is that you're called to do. And again, this has nothing to do with works, has nothing to do with a performance-based relationship with the Lord. He's just simply saying, hey, I'm entrusting you with some really important stuff, right? And so treat it as such. This isn't a game. This isn't just some, silly little thing that he's saying, well, if you feel like it, go ahead and do that. No. You know what it is? It's like he is always focused and engaged in being God. And we're his kids, so why should we be any less focused, any less engaged in the things that we're created to do than he is? I mean, that's what he's talking about here. He's talking about us simply being sons and daughters of our Father, right? Like Father, like Son, like Father, like daughter. It's an amazing thing that he's describing here, right? So, he acknowledges that there are things that can throw us off track, right? And that's why he uses this analogy of a household, the owner of the house, the head of the house, right? Getting distracted and unalert. Is that a word? Where he's taken by surprise by a thief. Well, no, I'm not gonna do that, right? We know there's a thief. We know we have an enemy who's out there trying to mess with us, and I'm not gonna stop being alert to that possibility. I'm not going to spend my days focused on the enemy, but I'm never going to be, lulled into some kind of a place where it's like, I don't ever have to, be concerned about the enemy again. Well, that's not true. So there's so much here, and I want to try to get through this. I'm watching the time just go. So Peter, in response, he says, so you two be ready. This is verse 40. For the Son of Man is coming at an hour that you do not expect. Right? So again, the idea here is I'm created to do some amazing things that we really should remain focused on and engaged with, because it's who we are. Wow. It's been a while. I'm usually pretty good about turning my phone off. So, so Peter goes on to say, or ask this question here. Says, Lord, are you addressing this parable to us or to everyone else as well? Peter, right? He's like, well, you seem like you're really putting a lot of responsibility on us, Jesus. Is this just for us, or is this everybody has to do this? Like, come on, Peter. So the Lord responds with another parable. And again, this is one of those parables that have been so misunderstood that it puts condemnation and judgment on people. It's like, oh my gosh. So Jesus says, who then is the faithful and sensible steward whom his master will put in charge of his servants to give them their rations at the proper time? Blessed is that slave whom his master finds so doing when he comes. Truly I say to you that he will put him in charge of all his possessions. Now, what is he talking about here? He's using the natural human experience or analogy of someone who has responsibility. Okay? And he's basically saying, when you've been given a job to do, well, do it. And do it well. Do it with excellence. Right? Because that's what you're called to do. That's what you're there for, is to do a good job, right? And in this case, it's talking about someone who has been put in charge of a house by the owner, and their job is to make sure everybody's fed and cared for, right? And so he says that if you're doing that, you're going to be blessed, right? Now, the key to understanding this passage is this verse 44. He says, truly I say to you that he will put him in charge of all his possessions. So this is describing how you become successful in this earthly sphere. Okay, why do I say that? This doesn't represent my relationship with God. And if I do everything well, that God is going to put me in charge of all his possessions. No, he's not. No one person is ever going to be put in charge of all of God's possessions. So this can't be referring to our, standing before God and what he's going to do for us. This is giving an analogy of, look, you're here on this earth to do something. And if it happens to be taking care of a household, well, do it well. Because if you do, you're going to get promoted. The key to promotion and the key to greater influence, a greater level of leadership, is do the thing that you have been given to do and do it well, right? And that goes for all of us in whatever it is that we're called to do. We want to do it with excellence. We want to do it well, not because we feel if we don't do it that God is going to be mad at us, he's going to punish us. But that's how people, what they read into this story because of the next part. Verse 45, it says, but if that slave says in his heart, my master will be a long time in coming, and begin to beat the slaves, both men and women, and to eat and drink and get drunk, the master of that slave will come on a day when he does not expect him, and at an hour when he does not know, and will cut him in pieces and assign him a place with the unbelievers. And that slave who knew his master's will and did not get ready or act in accordance with his will shall receive many lashes. But the one who did not know it and committed deeds worthy of a flogging will receive but few. And from everyone who has been given much shall much be required, and to whom they entrusted much, of him they will ask all the more. Now people, they look at this, they read this, and I did the same thing. When I would read this story in the past, I would go, oh man, I don't want to receive, I don't want to be cut to pieces by the Lord. I don't want to be, lashed, punished by him, because I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. Folks, the Lord doesn't do that. Our Father God is a good Father, and He doesn't cut us to pieces if we mess up. He doesn't give us lashes with a whip if we screw up. That's not the way He deals with us, okay? We are not under a punishment regime here in this new covenant, all right? Now, under the old covenant, they were. Let me stop here and take a moment just once again to thank my good buddy Joe Catalano for sponsoring Jesus Book and Gift. No, sponsoring Breakfast with Jesus Book and Gift. If you haven't gotten there yet, check it out. Biggest Christian bookstore in the state of New Jersey. And Route 1 South in Island, they've got all kinds of things for your growth and development, books and music and study materials, supplies for church and Sunday school, home decor, you name it, it's there. And if they don't have it, they'll get it for you. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 9, Sundays, noon to 5. Route 1 South in Island. Jesus Book and Gift. Check them out. All right. So this parable has been so misinterpreted because of the spirit of religion, wanting people to feel like at any moment, the Lord is going to, punish and cast them out and all these sorts of things that Jesus is talking about. And so that's not what He's talking about. Again, the context of this is He's giving us an example of what we should be doing in this earthly realm to fulfill the purpose, the things that we've been called to do. And so He uses some specific examples of people who have responsibility. Why? Because we have responsibility in the kingdom. Now, if I don't fulfill my responsibility, I will stand before the Lord at some point, because Paul talks about this in Corinthians, that we all will be standing before the Lord to give an account for what we did. But what we get there is either reward or loss of reward. There's no punishment involved. We're still going to be in heaven. We're still going to be with Him, but we're not being punished. So the context here is, look at what happens in the earthly realm when people are irresponsible with what they do, and learn from that. Okay, learn from the example of people who either do a great job at what they're given to do, whatever their responsibilities are. They do a great job, and what happens? They get promoted. They're given greater responsibility, more opportunity to lead and have greater influence, right? It's an awesome thing. Conversely, people who choose to be irresponsible and not do what they're called to do, well, there are consequences for that. And He's simply saying, look at what happens. Not that what happens in the earthly realm is going to happen to us. It's just there are some pretty negative consequences for being stupid. And this person here who decides, well, I'm going to just, get drunk, I'm going to start beating up people and whatnot. I mean, unfortunately, you could apply that to certain kinds of leadership, some of which is in the church, unfortunately. But the idea here is, don't be stupid. Know what you are called to do and do it well, because then you will find success. You won't be thrown, cut up. You won't be thrown. I love this. Assign him a place with the unbelievers. Well, what is that all about? Well, people who don't believe that there are consequences for their behavior are unbelievers. People who don't believe that you reap what you sow, they're unbelievers. They're not believing some of the most basic principles that God has laid down. And so as a result of that, they are going to be, what shall I say? They will position themselves in such a way that they can't receive what they should get, what the Lord wants them to have in the way of blessing and success here on the earth, right? So how do I know that none of this applies to us in our relationship with God? It's all here, right here in verse 48. This is a very familiar verse to many of us. It says that from everyone who has been given much shall much be required, and to whom they entrusted much, of him they will ask all the more. Who's the subject here? Right? The subject is they. This is not God. This is not the Lord. Right? It's talking about how people respond to us based on how we engage with and carry out the responsibilities that we've been given. If we've been given much to steward, to be responsible for, to manage, right? It makes a lot of sense that people are going to expect a lot from us. Conversely, those who have not been given a lot to be responsible for whatever reason, maybe they're young, they're new, they're starting out, right? You don't expect someone who has just been hired in a position to really be able to do well, because they've got a lot to learn, right? Jesus brings this out, that the one who did not know the will of the master and screws up, well, they're not going to really be punished for that. They'd be reprimanded and say, no, we don't do that, right? Whereas someone who has been involved in this thing for a long time, they know what the deal is, and yet they choose to do the wrong thing, right? Well, the consequences for them are much greater. Okay, so Jesus here is giving us these very basic principles of how to be successful in this world, how to represent well this kingdom that we've been brought into, and this relationship that we have with the Lord, that the world literally is looking at us and saying, are you the real deal or not? Do you really walk your talk? Or, are you all a bunch of hot air, bunch of hypocrites? You say one thing and you do the other. All right, a lot of that's wrapped up in here as well. So the context and the overall perspective that Jesus is giving here has to do with how we relate to people in carrying out our responsibilities on this earth, right? The one who has been given much, of that person shall much be required, and to whom they've entrusted much, of him they will ask all the more, right? So the more people, and this, you've seen this as well, the more that certain ones have been given a high level of trust by people, and then they betray that trust, right? It's much more devastating than someone who is relatively unknown and maybe they do something, steal or whatever, and affects a very small group of people. It's an entirely different thing than someone who has been, given a visibility level where people trust that person. Lots of people trust that person, and all of a sudden you find out that, wow, they did that. I have to say that there's going to be a lot of those kinds of things being revealed over the next year or two. Don't be surprised when you hear about things getting exposed over the next year or two of folks that were pretty well placed, high-level people, I'm talking about here in the U.S., and it's already happening, but it's going to accelerate. And so, this kind of thing that Jesus is talking about, it's so important that we understand it, right? That we recognize that he's giving us these very simple principles, right? Quote unquote secrets to being successful, right? He says, do the job that you were called to well. Do it with excellence. Not again because of how it will determine your relationship with God. That's locked in place because of Jesus. It's all about how we relate to and are seen by the world around us. Okay? And if we do that, we will be successful in being an influence for good, bringing people into an encounter with the kingdom of God and the love and the power of God. Why? Because we're being responsible about it, right? We're recognizing, wow, I do have an awesome responsibility here. And I'm not going to shirk that. I'm not going to, step away from that, because just how amazing is it that he even allows us to be part of what he's doing? And that's the thing. So I hope this is helpful for you. Again, it's a passage that has been sadly really misinterpreted and misapplied on so many levels. And when I started to really understand what Jesus was talking about, it's like, oh, that makes so much more sense now, because I know your heart, and this is not talking about how you respond to us when we mess up, but rather how the world is going to respond to us when we mess up. All right. So, ay. Good to see you guys. Let me see who else is jumping in here with us this morning. Where did I leave off? Let's see. Ralph and Rosa. Hey, Jen, it's good to see you. And even Adarmi is on. How are you? I know it's been a while. Patrick, Joanne. Yo, Rick, how are you, man? See all these people I haven't seen in a long time. Allison, Bernadette, Nicole, and Danny again. How are you, buddy? And Amanda. I think I got you all. If I missed you, so sorry. Have an awesome day. Thank you to those of you that are sharing this with your friends. I really appreciate that. And as always, reach out if you'd like to chat, or if you have questions, send me a Facebook message or an email. Hey, I hope you have a great weekend. Get a chance to relax a little maybe, and see who God wants you to just touch with his love and his power, right? Man, I love the fact that we get to do that. And I look forward to being back with you on Monday, 8:30 Eastern. All right. Thanks so much.